you said that there's one thing, for Shedeur Sanders to kind of lock down this starting quarterback job as we are a couple days out from training camp starting.
So I keep getting asked, people keep asking me, like, what does Shedeur Sanders have to do to win the job? What do you like? And we were at the Austin Carr golf outing on Monday, which is a great time, really good event. And, like people that were in my golf group were kind of asking me like, oh, what do you think about the quarterback competition? So it's like, I get these questions all the time. And the more and more I've thought about it, we've all kind of when you get asked that question, it's easy to lay out the things like, well, if he does this, or, if he keeps making improvements, or he shows that he can read a like whatever. Those are the easy answers to go to. But I'll be honest, like the more and more I thought about this, the more I've thought that Shedeur doesn't have to do anything extraordinary to me to win this job. Because as you know, I don't have a lot of confidence that Deshaun is going to be this good quarterback ever again. And I don't have a lot of confidence in him being the starting quarterback for this team. And so in thinking about that and thinking about how the spring looked, where it was like Deshaun probably had more like wow throws, but for every wow throw, he then had a throw that was like in the dirt or behind a guy or picked off. And Shedeur just felt more steady throughout the spring, where it was like he might have not had all the big eye-popping throws, but he was leading the offense, he was completing the passes, he was making the plays necessary. And he had a couple bad days in there, everybody does. But I thought about it more and more, and I'm like, I think it's less about Shedeur having to come out and do anything other than what he's done to this point in terms of like proving that he's developed, proving that he's seen things clear, and executing the plays. I think it's more about what Deshaun has to do, because Deshaun has to convince everybody that like he's truly the better of the two quarterbacks. And by the way, the fact that Todd Monken wasn't ready to make a decision at the end of minicamp, I think is telling, because he wanted to. And I think in his mind, he probably thought like by the end of minicamp, Deshaun will have cemented himself and pulled away that I'll be able to name him the starter. And that didn't happen. So what does that say? That tells you like, yeah, Shedeur put in the work and closed the gap. But it also tells you that like Deshaun isn't probably performing to the level that they thought he was going to perform to. So to me, it's like, I think Shedeur just keeps doing what he's doing. I think that could be enough to win the job, because, and I don't think he has to do anything exceptional or extraordinary, because I don't think Deshaun is just going to like run away with this thing. And if it comes down to that, like, yeah, you might lean Shedeur in that scenario. So I think it's more about Deshaun having to do something extraordinary and proving like my experience, my running ability, my passing is back and my shoulder's fine, and I can make more of these incredible plays than Shedeur can, for him to win the job than it is for Shedeur to do anything crazy special. I really do feel that way.
Yeah, I can get with that program, because it's more about stacking good practices and being consistent versus having those one or two wow moments that might make it to social media and then people make the choice to critique one way or another. One of the things we talked about before the show, and I looked it up. So the quarterbacks were there.
I forgot to. I was going to tell you during the break. I realized it was the quarterbacks and the rookies who showed up this week. Yes.
Yeah. So they are already there getting some early work in. I'm right there with you. All Shedeur has to do is just be consistent, stack good practices, and show that he's picking up what Todd Monken is putting down. I think that Deshaun Watson is going to be motivated. I think at this point I sound like a broken record. He's going to be motivated. I think he's going to do everything that he possibly can to win his starting job, because he sees his NFL mortality right in front of him.
Yeah.
And this is the best opportunity for him to revitalize his career, whether it be here or elsewhere long term, because he might want to still play again. I just question being off of your job for 693 days plus, when you know the speed of the game is a real thing.
For sure.
I'm not sure if you're going to be able to overcome that in a significant amount of time, to where it's not impacting the season, when we know we got to get a real good look at Shedeur Sanders before this season ends. So, yeah, that's the way I kind of look at that. Also, as far as the biggest non-QB story for me, I think it's going to be the Browns defense, because you have so many people with mixed opinions and feelings about the departure of Myles Garrett and Jim Schwartz. And I think that Jared Verse, to no fault of his own, is going to have a hard time separating himself so people can just see him as Jared Verse. But I'm really, really interested to see what Mike Rutenberg puts together, what his philosophy is like, how those players respond to him, how those assistant coaches that was here under Jim Schwartz responds to him as well. Myles Garrett was the face of this organization, the face of this defense, the best overall player that's not a quarterback in the NFL. But he's still one player. And it was more than just Myles Garrett that made that defense good and dominant at times. And so to me,
we're going to learn that for sure.
There's going to be something that I'm paying attention to on all three levels. You know, how good is this defensive line without Myles Garrett, right? Who's going to step up and be that guy to really anchor that front outside of Jared Verse? Is this the year that Alex Wright really flipped that switch?
Yeah.
What is Mason Graham going to look like in year 2? When I think about the second level, man, I think Carson Schwarzenegger is a star already. I think he's one of the best players at his position already. So what does year 2 look like for him? Yeah. Well, and then especially playing next to a Quincy Williams, what does the 3 safety look like? I think it's so many storylines inside the Browns defense itself that I'm going to be paying attention to that outside of the QBs.
No, that's a good answer. What I would say, too, is I don't know people I think people do, because a lot of people that are football fans understand how it works. But Myles' impact went beyond just rushing the passer in the defensive line. And so that's kind of the interesting thing here is Myles drew so much attention. He was double teamed, second most of all defensive ends in football last year. That impacts the next level because, hey, if Myles has 2 guys blocking him, that takes away a guy that's trying to get to the next level to block Carson Schwarzenegger so he can't make a play. That also, because of Myles' presence, the clock on quarterbacks is shorter, which means the secondary guys don't have to cover as long. His impact really did extend to all 3 levels of the defense. And so I look at it as Jared Verse has a lot to prove, filling in for taking over that role. And the rest of the defensive line has something to prove in terms of trying to meet him halfway on, we know you're not Myles Garrett, so we're going to sort of pick up the slack in our own way and add some sacks to our resume and some pressures to our resume and all those things. But then also what does it mean if there's an extra blocker getting upfield trying to block Carson Schwarzenegger? Can he still shed those things and make those plays? Can the secondary cover maybe a little longer to keep guys from scoring or whatever? So there's a lot to consider there.